Welcome to Let's Talk Wellness. It's time to have new conversations about mental health. Join Mara James as she guides us along this journey. And now, let's talk wellness. Welcome to Let's Talk Wellness. I'm your host, Mara James, and I want to say thank you for joining us today. These conversations are all about taking a deeper dive into understanding how we can support children and families to have better mental health and wellness. Let's Talk Wellness is brought to you by the Extraordinary Lives Foundation, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to improve children's mental health and emotional wellness. You could find out more information about ELF and more episodes at elfempowers.org/podcasts. And you can find the link in the show information below. Now, let's talk wellness with today's guest, Sussi Mattsson. Sussi is on a mission to turn past wounds into wisdom. Sussi is a coach for C-level executives and has quite a story about her childhood to share with us. Welcome, Sussi.
Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. And can you share with our friends watching and listening where you're located?
Yes, I'm currently in Sweden, otherwise living in Santa Monica, California.
Beautiful. Oh, it's so wonderful. So let's get right into it. How do you turn past wounds into wisdom?
Well, we need to go back in time when I was dealing with my own past childhood trauma, and I couldn't identify myself with that little kid. So I decided to write myself a letter to my younger self. And in that process of writing that letter, all the pain and the burden and the suffering suddenly belonged to the letter. It didn't belong to me anymore. And that experience was the starting point of me studying how writing is healing. And for 8 years, developed a proven method of writing a healing letter to yourself.
Wow. And that can be done starting at any age as the adult, writing the letter?
Absolutely. We have children who have written letters, and we have also, I think the oldest one is 92. So it's a big span of different genders and age, and it's beautiful.
That's good. So is there what's the youngest age? I'm assuming a 5-year-old wouldn't do it. Like, is there a certain age that you would start out with the child, like a teen?
What we have done is that when we work with children, we have a different method, and we are incorporating writing with painting, because sometimes they cannot express their feelings with the correct words due to their age. So we are combining the healing letter with painting, and what color do they choose, what kind of symbols do they use, and so forth. It's really interesting. So that we have been using that for kids, and but for adults, we have obviously the writing method. Yes.
I love that. So, are you open to sharing with us about your child? It seems like you've done a lot, you have this beautiful smile with such a heavy story. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us about your childhood.
Of course, of course. So when I was 8 years old, my mother died from cancer. She had been sick for 2 years, and she divorced my dad when I was only 4 years old, and I never seen him after that. But when my mother passed when I was 8, by the Swedish law, I was forced to live with him. And so that was the first time I saw him in 4 years. So he was quite a stranger to me.
Sure.
And coming to a new city and discovering that he had a new wife, and she was pregnant at the time, my new stepmother. And living with my father was 6 months of constant abuse. And after 6 months, I discovered that he had bought me a false passport and also a one-way airline ticket to the following day take me on board on a plane down to Southern Europe. So he was about to sell his own daughter to strangers. And in that split second, when you find out something like that, and you're only 8 years old, you're trying to come up with some solution. And even though I was only 8 years old, I really thought that I was worth saving. And I really thought that there has to be a better life somewhere. I didn't know where, but somewhere. So I decided to run away from home, which I did the following day after school, in order to not board that plane straight to hell. And yeah, moving fast forward, I found myself 34 years later, really successful in my business. Yet in my personal life, there was kind of a hole of not meaningful life, of something hollow inside of me. And that was the decision I made, that even though I needed to go into some dark spaces, I needed to discover some really hard things. I went back in time and processed my past.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing your story with us. So many questions. So number one, 8 years old, and you happened to find the passport one day before and the ticket one day before you were about to be shipped off.
So actually, my stepmother found it, and she knew firsthand how he could be, how abusive he could be.
Yeah.
And so she was telling me when I came home from school, she was telling me that I have something really important to say, and this is what I found, and what are we going to do? So she gave me 10 Swedish kroner, which is equal to almost $1, and that was it.
Yes.
And the following day, I remembered when I was going to kindergarten that my teacher, she had read the Pippi Longstocking. You have that in US as well. That a Swedish author, the Pippi Longstocking, when she ran away from home. So I thought, well, I'm only 8 years old, but if Pippi can do it, I can do it. So that was my idea. I didn't know my way around town because I haven't been out much. It was a totally new city. I only been there for 6 months, and I was only 8 years. But yeah, it was
So
bold and it was courageous, and it was necessary to save myself.
it is so, I mean, a terrible story, but it's so amazing to see like that. Obviously, you have angels around you that were, you had this book, you had this knowledge. If Pippi can do it, so could I. Wow. I don't, you wonder if the author ever thought like the impact that this book, and, I always say you help one child, you help one person, you help the world.
Mhm.
So that book, as much
Yeah.
as I enjoyed it and loved it with the pigtails, like wow, just oh my goodness. So that real, so you're, I mean, so you, but you, I also believe we're born with this inner resilience, right? And I think also thinking back, like, I also had my childhood trauma. We won't get into it now, but it definitely like we had to build up resilience, right? It was either that or we wouldn't have made it. Whereas with my kids, I think I definitely sometimes might have enabled them versus empowering them, right? And it's helped made us who we are today. But wow, I just keep thinking like now I need to go back and look at Pippi Longstockings and see like and reading it, knowing with your story, because that is just so
Mhm.
powerful. So here you are. So share with us what you did. So you leave school on the day, you run away. What does that look like? Where did you go?
Well, I knew that my father had an agreement with the principal. So I knew that I needed to go to school the whole day. I couldn't skip school. So after school, between I finished school and my dad got home from work, I knew there was a window of time. I couldn't tell time when I was 8 years old, but I knew that after school there was a while between I getting home and he getting home. So that was my opportunity to get away. And I think when you find yourself, when I look back and you find yourself in that kind of situation and you don't know where to go, and you only have like almost a dollar in your pocket, what do you do? And and it's so easy to lose hope and to feel hopelessness and feel loneliness, and and both of them are terrible advisors. And it's so easy to find yourself or put yourself in a valley of these negative emotions and ask yourself, I can see that now in my adult life, that ask myself, what can I do with what I have, with what I know at that time? And but we were so really super poor, and I had like constant stomach ache for 6 months. And so I came to a point where I had to use some of the $1 to buy me something to eat. And and I would like to leave you with this cliffhanger because it's all written in the book. Uh, but I found myself 34 years later, and and I had, like many people with trauma, close the door, not talk about it, and if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. I thought I was okay. A lot of people think they are okay, but what we don't see is that our stories live in our heart, and our actions, our hidden, unhealed wounds live in our actions, and that we have during all those years subconsciously creating a bunch of soul-sucking survival patterns, actually. And they have become our normal. And we have built those invisible walls around our heart because we believe they protect us. So all those things together is making us feeling that we are okay. But if we are open a teeny tiny little door to the past, we know that we're not okay. And so I do believe that when we can look back and acknowledge our trauma, that this is exactly what happened, nothing else, no judgments, no explanations, nothing, just firmly, just this is what happened. And we can pull out the life lessons from that story, then something magical happens with ourselves. So,
Wonderful. Oh. And so you
yeah.
shared with us about a book, and you're going to leave us hanging. So share with us what book you're referring to.
Okay, so my upcoming book is From Me to You, and it's about my childhood, how I grew up really poor with my mom, and when she became sick in cancer, and the 6 month living with my abusive father, and me running away from home, and how everything ended with that. I mean, uh, easily a lot of kids who are living in the streets today, it could be like being raped, being killed, uh, becoming a drug addict. You know, there is a lot of things happening on the streets. And luckily, that is not my story.
Yes. Amen.
So when I look back, I can see that my trauma, my wounds, have obviously made me who I am and shaped me who I am today, and shaped my values and my beliefs. And now I'm creating something beautiful and turning this pain into a global purpose of collectively healing people by writing a healing letter to themselves.
That is, yeah, you shared
Yeah.
with me that writing is healing, and let's talk more about that because that's so powerful, so important.
Mhm.
Yeah, like what would you recommend that they include in a letter? Yeah.
Okay, so for 8 years, I did this study how writing is healing, and what specific factors do we need to include in writing a healing letter? And when I knew the factors, I also discovered that they need to be in a specific order because we need to set up the brain for success and not dive into the suffering, but be empowered by our life story instead of disempowered by our story. So that was the next step. This is the first step is obviously what key factors do I need to address, and in which order do I need to address those. So I developed a 4-step method how to write a healing letter. And then I asked my marvelous coaching clients, you need to test this out. And they did. And they got like so amazing results, and the willingness of sharing their traumas and being so strong and courageous. So I started to call them wisdom writers.
Ah,
And then I knew that this method is bulletproof. And due to networking and all my contacts and clients in 21 countries, a lot of people started to send in their own wisdom letters. And we stopped counting when we had 11,000 letters.
I'm sorry, did you
And
say 11,000 letters?
yes.
What?
So I thought, well, it's kind of selfish to keep this method to myself. And how can I reach a larger scale of people? And how can I do something good? How can something good come out of my story? And so so all of a sudden, by itself, the From Me to You movement kind of started its seeds around the world in different countries. And now we have a lot of thousands and thousands of wisdom writers. And
That, wow.
yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. I want to even hear more about that. We're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back to hear more.
We hope that you're enjoying today's Let's Talk Wellness podcast. And if you have a topic that you would like us to explore, we would love to hear from you. Simply email us at info@elfempowers.org. That's info@elfempowers.org. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Wellness. I am your host, Mara James, and today we're speaking with Sussi Mattsson. Welcome back, Sussi.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you.
So before we get into the yumminess of the 4 questions, and how people, all about the app that's coming out and all that good stuff. Do you have any children?
Yes, I do. I have a daughter, Julia. She is turning 23 just in a couple of weeks.
Oh, funny. When's her birthday?
June 8th.
My daughter's turning 23 on May 20th. Interesting. Love that. Maybe they're soul sisters from different countries. So have you noticed, like as you were writing letters and how like your childhood trauma has affected either how you're parenting her or affected her as a child in hindsight?
Absolutely, in a lot of ways, actually, because when I grew up, my mom had to work the night shift, at the factory in order to earn some extra money to be able to have her own apartment. And she left me at night when I was just a little kid to be able to work. And of course, when I grew up having no clothes that actually fit my size, they were either too big or too small. And I didn't have any toys. I had just one doll, and that was it. And of course, when I became a mom, I wanted to be a present mom. I didn't want to leave her. So, and she was just a little kid when she started to travel with me with work. And she has been amazing and learning so much about people in different countries and values and cultures and a broader perspective of life. And of course, when she wanted to have sneakers from a certain brand for a lot of money, a lot of dollars, then I totally broke down because I remembered that I didn't have shoes that even fit my size. So you're totally right, Mara, that of course my childhood, in different kind of situation from my childhood are coming back up in the surface in my parenting Julia, but also making compensations, like buying her a lot of Barbies. Like she had like 117 Barbies. I mean, that's a lot.
Did she
And
want
a
them or
lot of,
did you want them?
no, she wanted them. She was building a whole Barbie city in the living room and stuff like that. But having enough clothes and having enough food and having clothes that fit and having toys and all those kind of things that I didn't have. So my past suddenly became alive in my parenting with Julia, but also in a good way, because when you have been able to look at your past and pulled out the life lessons you have learned, then there is a shift happening in your body where you can turn those piece of wounds into piece of wisdom. And when you can use that wisdom in your day-to-day life, then it's going to better yourself, but also in different kind of roles you have in your life. So I think that a lot of people who have closed the door and afraid of dealing with the past and not being aware of what the cost is to keep holding on, and also not be willing to bridge the gap that divides your past from your future, there is consequences for us doing that when we are not willing to heal. But I think it all comes down to the question, what in your life is worth fighting for? I mean, that's it. And if we want to be a good parent and not bleed on other people because I have unhealed wounds, then we need to be aware of our parenting. So this is a whole
Yeah.
discussion, a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, no, Dr. Shafali, I
Yeah.
think she's in New York, talks about conscious parenting. And I'm gonna say I was fully asleep when I was parenting my kids. I didn't even I didn't know about my childhood trauma or anything. And they say hurt people, hurt people, or hurt parents will hurt kids, not intentionally, or traumatize people. But And I just think this day and age, like these kids are really having challenges, but they're reflecting kind of what the parents need to heal. So looking at it as an opportunity, and so many, and I'll start with moms, like they wouldn't take care of themselves. That when I was running my husband's OBGYN practice, they would come in like, I want to get pregnant, I'm going to start taking vitamins and working out, and they wouldn't take care of themselves until they were thinking about their child. So now it's like, okay, if you want to be
Yeah.
the best parent that you want to be, yes, do take your vitamins, have a good night's sleep, exercise, but also work on your mental and emotional wellness, because it will directly impact the childhood stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you again for sharing that. So now the 4 questions, are you, open to sharing us a little bit about the questions that you guide everybody with your book and your app?
You mean the 4 steps of
Oh, 4
writing your
steps, sorry.
healing
Yeah,
letter?
yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, the first step is to write down exactly what happened, because a lot of people unfortunately have a lot of wounds, but we need to just pick one of those who spontaneously comes to mind. And so the first step is obviously acknowledging what happened and write down exactly what happened. And there is pre-exercises and a lot of under questions, during this step 1. But that will be the first step. And then the second step is identifying your life lessons from that specific trauma. And we know that what leads our life is our core values and our belief system. And both of them are highly affected by the life lessons we acknowledge. So take a good look at what life lessons did I learn from that past trauma. And in this method, we divide life lessons into 3 different categories. The life lessons you learned about yourself, you learned about others, and you learned about life in general, the world in general. And then in step 3, we're turning those life lessons into a piece of wisdom. So when we are able to transform those in piece of wisdom, then we are also limitless in giving back to people. Mm-hmm. And then the 4th step is the forgiveness work, which is obviously a huge thing for a lot of people. We talk about forgiveness, we talk about gratitude, and then we are ending up the letter with expressing love. So we are ending up in really high. And I think there is kind of 2 beautiful gifts in this method, because the first gift is obviously to yourself, because you're healing yourself and you're turning your past wounds into a piece of wisdom. But the second gift is that you're sharing it so other people can benefit from your life lessons, and people who are currently suffering and can find themselves helping out, reading other people's letters. And that's why we are collecting the wisdom letters in this book collection. And currently we have 29 different titles. And so for some people, we understand that the different kind of books will actually act as a survival guide. And for other people, it will just be a book full of tools, practical tools, how other people have done to overcome their challenges. So we are so happy for the wisdom writers from all around the globe sending in letters to those book collections. Good. So what happens after the 4 steps is that people often find themselves with newfound knowledge about themselves, because they can now connect the dots of who they are and why they are, who they want to become. And then there is an after session of what do I do now with this new knowledge? What kind of steps am I willing to take, and how can that change and transform my life. And so far, we have so many success stories of wisdom writers who have done amazing things, because as they express, there is a liberating feeling of freedom that comes from writing this letter and me guiding them through all this. And as you can understand, Mara, there is a lot of pre-exercises and post-exercises and during all these steps, obviously. But transforming the relationship to the wound and creating greater resilience, but also reframing this experience. There is a lot of benefits from writing this healing letter. And I'm so honored actually to be part of all this, even though I'm the founder of it, but to see all those people creating better lives for themselves and for their families.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're part of it, but also you had to go through a lot and suffer a lot. So, and now like God gets to work through you. And I love, like, the first step is really encouraging people to, have the courage just to put the pinky toe in. You don't have to, jump into the pool, just the pinky toe. Because once they could acknowledge or, recall, because as you know, some people don't recall all the trauma. I didn't even know about my childhood trauma until I was 52 years old. And I worked with a bunch of healers for 4 years. And then the therapist, that was finally like my subconscious was able to release it. So that is definitely a huge first step. But, both Sussi and I would encourage everyone to take it because it's so beautiful and so freeing. And you could look at Sussi and I and we're glowing and smiling because we've been through the healing process of our traumas. So let me ask you to use the F word, forgiveness. And I'm a big fan of it. And I know that people that have done it say that it's imperative in the journey, and people that haven't will give me quotes and reasons why it's not imperative. I'm like, really? Okay, well, the ones that, don't do it. And I use with one of my clients the word release instead of forgiveness, because forgiveness can, and she's also in the midst of it with not only her childhood. I don't even think she's looked at her childhood stuff, but mostly with her elderly mother. So when you're in the midst of it, it's really hard to forgive. But what are your thoughts on that? For me, I think it's so important because, I spoke to somebody who felt like so healed, but she's all taking all this medication. I'm like, well, when we're truly healed, and I don't know, this is just me, like, you won't need the medication because you'll be healed. So what are your thoughts on that in the last few minutes that we have left?
Okay, so, well, I struggle myself because I had this question coming back and back over and over was, how do I forgive my father? Because he didn't believe he needed to be forgiven. And so how do you forgive somebody who doesn't believe he needs to be forgiven? That is a question that is coming back over and over and over again. And then you are finding yourself you came to a point where when you see that it's not at all about the other person, it's all about yourself. And I can forgive, and I don't have to say it to you. I don't have to write you a letter or spell it out or whatever. I just need to do it in peace with myself in my heart. And for some people, it's harder because I did a project with South Carolina inmates. And of course, when they were writing their wisdom letter and came to the step of forgiveness, there is a huge forgiveness in forgiving yourself for making harm to another person, but also forgiving their parents or their people they have had in their life who have contributed to put them in this difficult situation of crime. So there is obviously different levels of forgiveness. But what I say is that if you're not willing to forgive, there is something holding you back. And then we need to find out what is holding you back and why are you not willing to let go. And sometimes that could be subconsciously, but there is always something. So far, there's always something. And there is a reason. And sometimes people are afraid of let go of what is familiar, because it's so easy to stay in hate and stay in and play the victim card and suffer and do all that, because that is all I know for X amount of years. But stepping out of that is a whole new world. And I'm not sure I know all the tools, I have all the tools, or know how to navigate in that new world of not being a victim and not feeling sorry for myself and et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes there are fear in the process of forgiving, because they don't know how to live their day-to-day life if I forgive, if I let go of hate, and if I let go of feeling sorry for myself, or if I let go of this and that. So people who have been willing to forgive have experienced this freedom feeling.
Freedom.
That
That's the word
is,
that, yeah, freedom.
yeah, freedom feeling, because you don't know that kind of feeling until it happened.
Yeah.
And a lot of wisdom writers have expressed to me that it's not even possible to go back and live how I used to live, because now I know there is a different level of living, and I want to stay here and I want to continue to grow. So yeah.
So beautiful. Yeah, that freedom is exactly the word that came to my mind. So we'll share in the show information your app, the link for the book, and that will be wonderful. And what's the best way in case people want to get in touch with you? Is there a website or an email address?
They can go to frommetoumovement.com.
Okay, beautiful.
From
We'll
me.
put that in the show information.
Yeah.
Sussi, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our friends that are watching and listening. Always remember that you are amazing.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Wellness. This podcast has been brought to you by the Extraordinary Lives Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you would like to listen to more conversations like this, we invite you to subscribe to our mailing list at www.elfempowers.org to be notified when our episodes are published. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to bringing you our next conversation on Let's Talk Wellness.